All right, in 2 weeks, California will hold a recall election for its governor for the second time in the state's history. It's only the second time. On September the 14th, California voters will be asked two questions. One, if they want to recall Governor Gavin Newsom, and two, the question will be who should replace him if he is recalled. If 50% or more of the voters answer yes to the first question, the candidate with the most votes in the second question becomes the governor of America's most populous state. With me now to talk about the bad policies that led to this moment is nationally, we're going to be joined, well, we're waiting to get Larry Elder's going to be joining us, the sage from the South Central. He's an attorney and a syndicated radio talk show host who's been tracking the actions of Gavin Newsom there in California. In fact, I was out there in California. It was interesting because I've been out there a few times this year. And I was out there with my son. We went to a ranch, JH Ranch, father and teen ranch. But it was interesting this time, juxtaposed to earlier in the year, you know, when Newsom was cracking down on all the churches meeting, you had the mask mandates everywhere. It's interesting with this second wave of the coronavirus that he didn't impose the mask this time. I wonder why. Well, I think it was because of the political pushback when he shut down the state, forcing mask, you know, pushing the vaccines, forcing many of those onto state workers. Look, I think he realizes that he's in serious trouble because of the policies that he has pursued. Now, we can get into some of the other policies, what he's been pushing in the public schools out there. There's no end to the stuff, every wacky idea that the left has not just been talked about in California, but has been implemented. I mean, a massive government overreach, you know, acting without the legislature when it came to the coronavirus, the executive orders that he did declaring California a vote by mail state, even though they didn't have the infrastructure for it, the massive shutdowns of private businesses, which created a loss of jobs, unemployment checks going to prisoners and felons in the amount of $500 million, $2 billion, according to one website, $2 billion in unemployment fraud, an $80 million billboard education plan to remind people to social distance, $80 million to tell people to stay away from one another. It was just, there's no end to the craziness of Gavin Newsom. And as a result, it was kind of a perfect storm as he kept pushing all this stuff and people saying, no, we've had enough. And so that really gave rise to this recall effort that nobody thought would happen, but they did it. They reached the threshold, and so now we're going to see on September 14th, the California voters are going to have the opportunity to answer these two questions: whether or not they want to recall Newsom and who should replace him. So we're still waiting, I think, to connect with Larry and get his take on what led to this point in time and what may be the outcome. I'm really wondering, you hear this all the time about the pendulum swinging back and forth. Remember that California was a state in which Ronald Reagan came from. Now, it was obviously it's always been a large state, but it was a conservative oriented state, pro-business, pro-growth. But then somewhere along the way, they got lost. And we saw this move to the left with all these leftist policies, far outside even the left, the typical liberal policies. And everything that's, just any crazy idea, it's been tried in California. As a result, they're driving businesses out. I'm not quite sure how the state survives as they are taxing businesses, putting more on the business community with the outlandish social policies. I'm frankly just not sure how it's going to work. May not. But I think this is why you see, for only the second time in the state's history, that there is going to be they've approved a recall of the governor, because I think they've had enough. Now, we've also seen in the 2018-2020 election, we saw some reversals of some of the congressional seats that had gone Democrat have gone Republican. And so there's kind of a regrouping. The question is, have they reached a point that's just too far to rebound? Because, a lot of people have left the state. I've talked to a number of business owners in California that have moved to Nevada. They've moved Oregon. They've just moved out of the state because of the high taxes and crazy policies. Okay, I think we've got Larry now. Larry Elder, welcome to Washington Watch.
Tony, thank you so much for having me. I hope you hear me okay.
All right. Do we have audio for Larry?
I have audio.
Larry, can you? Okay, Larry. Fine. All right, very good. Well, let's start off. 2 weeks, the voters of California going to have an opportunity to decide whether or not they want to replace Governor Newsom. But I want to ask you the question, what has led us to this point? Have the voters of California finally said enough of this craziness?
They have. 1.7 million people signed a petition to recall this man. At least a third of them were people that voted for him just 2 years earlier. By that, I'm talking about independents and Democrats. The majority of Hispanics, about 65% of them, voted for him 2 years earlier. But Tony, right now, they are angry. They're angry at the way the state has been shut down against science. You know that the governor famously sat up there at that French Laundry restaurant with the very lobbyists and drafters of the mandate that he was ignoring by not wearing masks, by not engaging in social distancing. His own kids were enjoying in-person private education while denying in-person education for the kids here in California, 80% of whom are Black and brown. I only mention that, Tony, because the left prides itself on caring about Black and brown students. Now, before the pandemic, 75% of Black boys could not read at state levels of proficiency, and those levels were already low. Now about half of third graders cannot read at state levels of proficiency, and the majority of Black and brown parents living in the inner city, Tony, they want school choice. They want to be able to put their kid in a charter school, in a private school, homeschooling, or a religious school. They want the money to follow the child rather than the other way around. And the number one obstacle to that, of course, is the teachers union. The teachers union is the most powerful union in California. They're the largest funder of my opponent. They've already given him a couple of $1 million to defeat me. Altogether, he's raised about $50 million from the usual suspects: teachers union, public sector union, Hollywood, big tech. And people are angry, not just because of the decline in quality of school, not just because of the way he shut down the state. By the way, shuttering 1/3 of all small businesses. Many of them are owned by Black and brown people. We also have a rise in homelessness. And for the first time, the average price of a home in California, Tony, has hit $800,000. That's 150% above the national average. And for the first time in our state's history, 170-year history, people are leaving.
So, Larry, the straw that broke the camel's back was his overreach with the coronavirus, the mask, the shutdowns. Right. Is that it?
That's it. And again, you look at what he's done. He's just now imposed yet another mandate. If you're a state worker, if you've not been vaccinated, you're going to be tested once a week, and you're going to be required to wear a face mask at work. Now, think about that. I'm not anti-vax. I've been vaccinated because of my age and because I've got an underlying blood condition. My doctor strongly advised me to do it. But everybody in California who wants to be vaccinated has been able to get vaccinated. If you're poor, you can get vaccinated for free. A lot of people have made the decision not to do it. I mean, after all, didn't Kamala Harris and Joe Biden say if Donald Trump said to take the vaccine, they weren't going to take it? And it was approved on an emergency basis by the FDA, and a lot of people just don't trust it. I was on a campaign.
I agree. Not anti-vax, but it should be. I am pro-choice when it comes to people being able to make their decision. as to what's best for them when it comes to getting these vaccines. Larry, we're out of time. I
30
want to thank you
seconds.
for joining us. Always great to talk with you.
Just go to electelder.com, Tony. Throw a little something in the tip jar because I'm going to need to raise some money to defeat this man. But he's gone after September 14th.
All right, Larry, great to talk with you.